If you think you know the clear and obvious winner in the two-stroke versus four-stroke debate, you've already lost the plot entirely. This debate isn't just annoying, it's toxic. It divides riders, is built on pure ego and complete misinformation, and worst of all, it just makes you look plain stupid. See, everyone thinks their bike is better, but almost nobody understands the truth about these bikes in the first place. So let's clear this up once and for all before someone tries to pull you into another pointless shouting match in the comments. I'm going to break down the real reasons this debate exists in the first place, the myths that keep it alive, and the actual logic behind which bike is right for which rider. But fair warning, this isn't just a list of pros and cons. This is a full-on detox for the dirt bike community. Because if we want to keep growing the sport, we've got to stop letting dumb arguments and tribal loyalty drive people away. I'm gonna need your help to shut this nonsense down. Now, before I dive into the deep end here, I'd like to let you know that I'm giving away some free month-long trials of my Patreon, so y'all can get a taste of what I've been cooking up over on The Secret Show. You can redeem your free month through the first link in the description or in the pinned comment below. But make sure you're quick because spots are gonna go fast. Also, Soup Moto shirts are now available. You can support the channel and get your own high quality shirt through the link in the description. They're made right here in the USA and printed by my friends over at Commonwealth Press, which is a union screen printing shop in Pittsburgh. And since you're supporting fair labor and representing the channel, I'll throw in a 15% discount below. So everyone argues about two strokes versus four strokes, but most of them sound like they've never actually ridden both. Well, I put out a poll on my channel asking this very question, and what do you know? With over 800 votes as it currently stands, the results are actually 50-50. But what really made me happy was the comments explaining why. As it turns out, a lot of my viewers had some great logical takes on why they prefer one over the other, which they backed up with sound reasoning. Now, this is not the norm when you look at this debate across the internet, but I reckon this logical response from you guys had something to do with the fact that you vibe more with my approach to finding the right bike, which kind of goes against the normal be a manly man, get a big and powerful dirt bike type mindset. So why is this debate so incredibly broken? Well, I think a lot of it does come down to a bunch of old and worn out mindsets. First off, you have the ego wars. Riders using their bike to flex their identity. You know, the real men ride two strokes argument, which I always thought was incredibly funny because while yes, a two-stroke power band does have a certain punch to it, modern four-stroke race bikes pretty much have that same punch as soon as you crack the throttle. And then that power carries consistently the whole way through the rest of the RPM range. So if you thought you were a badass just because you could hold on to a two-stroke, I'd love to see you crack the throttle on a 450. Next, you got the boomers who are stuck way back in the Stone Age, and I'm sorry to the older riders who watch my channel, I'm not talking to all of you here, but I am talking to a lot of you. See, some of you only remember four strokes as air-cooled turds, and you just refuse to accept that modern four strokes absolutely shred. Then you have the brand/engine type loyalty logic. Now I made another video about this, but these are the people who defend what type of bike they own, not what's actually best. They don't pay attention to any real data, they don't give a shit what the bike is meant for, they just dick ride whatever brand and style it was that was featured on the bandwagon passing through town that day. Now, as you can see, most takes surrounding this two-stroke versus four-stroke debate are uninformed, emotional, and tribal. They're not performance or purpose-based. And I might be straw-manning some of these points, so let me try to actually steel-man some of these arguments. See, the next reason this debate is broken is because beyond the stuff I already just mentioned, some of the common talking points, and here's where I'm going to steelman them, while they're partially accurate, they still contain glaringly misguided generalizations. So when it comes to defending 4-strokes, you'll hear people say, 2-strokes are unreliable and they blow up all the time. But that's really only true if you neglect maintenance or you have some uncommon mechanical issues. Now, on the other hand, when defending 2-strokes, you'll hear people say that 4-strokes cost thousands of dollars to repair when they blow up. But once again, they really only blow up if you neglect maintenance or have uncommon mechanical issues. So here we go, I'll steelman them. Where they're correct on these talking points is 2-strokes usually require more frequent maintenance, that is true. But they're also often cheaper to repair if they do blow up because of their simplicity. Now on the flip side of that coin, 4-strokes have longer maintenance intervals, meaning you don't have to do maintenance all the time, but they are often more expensive to rebuild if they do blow up because of their complexity. But the truth of it is, and here's where people really miss the point, if you're a casual rider, both bikes are plenty reliable. As long as you complete your basic maintenance, you shouldn't run into any catastrophic issues. Now, if you're racing and beating the piss out of the bikes, it really doesn't matter whether it's a 2-stroke or a 4-stroke because you'll still strain the components of the engine regardless, and your bikes are going to require more frequent maintenance than if you were just cruising around for fun. So yes, while there is some truth to the difference in maintenance costs and complexities between the two engine types, this is not really something that most people will need to worry all that much about. But talking about why the 2-stroke versus 4-stroke debate is broken still doesn't answer the question of which dirt bike is right for you. Let me try to break it down here as simply as possible. In youth bikes, you have two different camps. You got racing and you got just riding for fun. Now, if you're a kid and you're going to be racing, the most common bikes you'll be seeing are going to be 2-strokes. Now, of course, in the extremely mini bikes, like when you start out at like 4 years old or something, what you used to see was 2-stroke 50cc's like KTM and Cobra. While those are still around for sure, those are kind of getting phased out and electric bikes are taking those spots over. But in like the bigger youth bikes, like the 65s, 85s, 105s, 112s, which those are called super minis, and also 125s, which are great transition bikes from youth classes to big bikes, those are all going to be 2-strokes. Now, while there are some 4-strokes on the market in youth racing, and by some, the only one I can think of is the CRF 150R in the super mini class. Like I said before, the vast majority of bikes you'll find for this type of riding are going to be 2-strokes. That's just comes down to what's offered. Now, if you're a kid who just wants to ride for fun, or maybe you're a beginner who's never been on a dirt bike before, you're going to find mostly 4-stroke air-cooled bikes. Now, they come in all sizes ranging from 50cc to 110cc to the very popular TTR 125. There are just tons of these bikes, but what they all have in common are they're usually air-cooled 4-strokes with very, very tame engines. So yes, an easy generalization to make about youth bikes is 2-strokes are usually more race-oriented, and 4-strokes are usually more beginner-friendly and less intimidating. In the youth realm of things, the split isn't really about what's better, it's more just about what's available and appropriate for your situation. But what about full-size bikes? Because that's where this debate really happens. Because unlike youth bikes, full-size bikes have both 2-stroke and 4-stroke models available for pretty much every discipline. So I'll try to explain them one by one. Let's start off with motocross. If you want to be competitive in motocross, you're gonna be riding a 254-stroke or a 454-stroke, period. That's it. All the racers qualifying for Loretta's are going to be on 4-strokes unless they're in one of those transition classes like I mentioned before from the youth bikes like Schoolboy or the 125 class. Now, like it or not, this is the way the classes were drawn up, and the 4-strokes are just the bikes that are the most competitive in this discipline of racing currently. Now, I love 125s. They're great to transition from minis up to big bikes, and they're also extremely fun to shred around on a motocross track, but they're just not powerful enough to compete with the 250 4-strokes. Now, what about the 250 2-strokes? Yeah, they're super cool, they're nostalgic, but they're also underpowered when you compare them to 450s. And that's the class they'd be racing in. Now, if you want proof of this, look at Jared Lesher. He's a pro racing supercross on a 250 2-stroke, and he tries as hard as he can. I mean, the fans absolutely love seeing the 2-stroke out there, and I've talked to him and I know he's having a blast racing it, but the reality is, he's not getting the results that he could be getting were he on a 450. The 250 2-stroke just can't compete with 450s. With all that being said, if you don't care about being competitive and you just want a bike with a simple engine that's more affordable than a 4-stroke race bike, plus still a ton of fun on the motocross track, sure, go ahead and get a 2-stroke. Next, let's talk about cross country, GNCC, and hare scrambles. Now, for the most part, 4-strokes dominate here too. A ton of brands make dedicated cross-country models like the Yamaha YZ250FX, which is just basically their YZ250F motocross bike, but it's tailor-made for cross-country racing. Now, the reason that motocross-like 4-strokes do so well here is that the terrain in this type of racing is often fast, flowy, and rough, which is just like a motocross track. Now, don't get me wrong, 2-strokes can still be competitive in this discipline because although the terrain is similar to motocross, the long endurance aspect of this type of racing, because you're racing for hours on end, means that the riders don't necessarily have to be in a full sprint the entire time like they do in motocross. With that being said, 4-strokes are still much more common in the top ranks. But ultimately, in this type of riding, it's much more of a 50-50 split, 2-strokes versus 4-strokes, than it is in motocross. Rider preference and terrain make more of a difference here. And if you aren't at the top of the ranks in this type of racing and you're just more of an amateur chill rider, it really doesn't matter what type of bike you're on, just as long as you're comfortable on that bike. For example, I raced a hare scramble last year on my bike, the CRF 250F, which is like a play bike that only has like 20 horsepower, and I was racing against full-blown enduro bikes, and I got 6th place out of like 50 some riders in my class. I did perfectly fine because I was comfortable on the bike, and it was an endurance race where I wasn't all out sprinting the entire time, so the power of my bike didn't really matter. But if you want to be competitive, once again, similarly to motocross, it seems like the top ranks are going to be 4-stroke race bikes. Now let's move on to hard enduro and regular enduro. Now this is where the 2-stroke shines. The 300cc 2-stroke is the gold standard in hard enduro because of its lighter feeling when it's compared to the heavy 4-strokes. Now this lends itself to a much higher maneuverability in very technical terrain. It's also got very smooth low-end torque, which is great for crawling and traction control. The 4-stroke bikes are oftentimes just going to break traction, they'll break loose. Now there are 4-stroke enduro bikes, they do exist, and some riders choose to run them in regular enduros. And you even have pros like Johnny Walker riding 4-strokes in extreme hard enduro events, but overall, riders tend to say that the 4-strokes are heavier and harder to manage in technical terrain. Now lastly, you have the beginner-friendly bikes for adults. In my opinion, 4-strokes dominate this realm as well. You have the 3/4 size bikes like the CRF 250F, which I briefly mentioned earlier, and I have tons of videos on if you're curious. The TTR 230, which is also in the same class, and the KLX 300R, which is actually liquid cooled and has some upgraded suspension. But all these bikes offer an approachable sized chassis with super tame and smooth power delivery. Now, there are also 2-strokes in this realm. Basically only Beta's line of X-Trainer bikes are the ones that I know of. And if you know you're going to be doing pretty much only enduro or hard enduro, I think these bikes are great options to start on and build your fundamentals, because eventually you're going to end up transitioning to a full-blown enduro 2-stroke most likely. So if you're going to start on a more tamed down sort of more approachable chassis-sized two-stroke, that makes a lot of sense. But for the general rider, I think the 4-stroke play bikes are the better option simply because of their price, availability, and super usable 4-stroke power, which lends itself to tons of different riding scenarios. So yes, the 2-stroke versus 4-stroke debate is indeed broken. And that's because we're not even asking the right question. What's better, 2-stroke or 4-stroke? And that's actually an impossible question to answer. What we should be asking is, which type of riding is the 2-stroke or 4-stroke better suited for? Do you want to win races in motocross? Get a 4-stroke. You want to get super technical and ride hard enduro? You'll want a 2-stroke. Or are you just a casual rider who tackles a lot of different terrain? Well, in that case, really either will work. It just depends on your vibe. See, I look at these bikes like tools. And as much as I love a good multi-tool, it's impossible to find one tool that can do every single job. So when you're looking for your next dirt bike, don't pick it based on ego or what the internet tells you is better. Pick it based on purpose. What type of riding are you going to be doing on that bike? Which bike is the right tool for the job? Now, if you enjoyed my perspective on this, you'll love my video on why dirt biking might not survive and what we need to do to save it. Click the video on screen now to check it out.